Hi, I'm Nate Kilton, Plain City Commissioner. It's my pleasure to have with me today Mark Hudson. He's a 30-year veteran with the Hillsborough County Planning Commission, and he's an executive planner there now. Mark, thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Plant City is a growing community. It has been for a long time. Will continue to be on the I-4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando, desirable Florida. How do we deal with that growth?
Well, you are correct. Plant City is growing. Our most recent population projections for the city show the Plant City growing from where it is today, about 40,000 residents, to almost 70,000 residents by 2045. We see a lot of population growth in this area, particularly as our strategic location between Orlando and Tampa. Also, we see Plant City growing a lot as an employment hub. We see this as one of the major areas in eastern Hillsborough County to offer those employment opportunities, growing by about 175% over that same time frame. Plant City started as you know, as 1 square mile. We've grown to 27 square miles today. And for the most part, that's been done through voluntary annexations over that 100-year period. And there is quite an elaborate process that someone goes through if they do want to approach the city and become part of greater Plant City.
So with an annexation, the city's not going out and taking somebody's property and bringing it inside the city boundaries. The owner has to approach the city to do that, correct?
That is correct. There are 3 processes for annexation. One is done through the legislature. One is done by referendum. But since the late 70s, early 80s, which is over the last 30, 40 years, Plant City has basically entertained voluntary annexations. And those are annexations where the property owner approaches the city for numerous reasons of wanting to become part of this community, and the city evaluates that, whether it's appropriate for them and they can serve that land area for future development.
And so in order for that to happen, that property has to be already adjacent to the city boundaries, right?
Correct. There are some statutory requirements. They have to make a good connection with the city. They can't just be connected by, a minor street or something of that nature. There has to be a broader connection in that regard. And another major stipulation is they can't create an enclave, meaning that a piece of property that's unincorporated county is completely surrounded by the municipality of Plant City. That process is evaluated both by the planning staff of Plant City and the city attorney.
And so all of this is done through public hearings. Kind of walk us through how that process works.
Dealing with a voluntary annexation, that's rather a straightforward process. An individual approaches the city, they request to become part of that city and submit a petition. Both the planning staff and the city attorney review that petition. We talk to some other departments to determine if we can serve that petition, particularly with public utilities. If that is in fact the case, then we go through the annexation process. There are public hearings, both in front of the planning board, which is a lay group that advises the city commission on planning issues, and then ultimately in front of the city commission there's another public hearing. And through that process, individuals can have input into that annexation.
All right, so after somebody's annexed into the city, can they just build whatever they want to?
No, there's several steps they have to go through, and a considerable amount of analysis needs to be done, particularly on staff's part. The first process usually is adjusting or updating their land use. They currently have a land use that that complies with Hillsborough County's comprehensive plan. We have to update that and modify that to be consistent with the Plant City's comprehensive plan. And the Plant City's comprehensive plan is the blueprint of how the community wants to grow and covers a number of topics: land use, housing, public utilities, topics of that nature. So they apply and they request a certain land use. In many instances, when you're coming in from unincorporated county, you're in a very rural setting or a rural development pattern. That usually when you come into the city, you see a more urban development pattern because we are providing it public utilities. So through that process, staff makes an analysis and recommends to the different bodies what we feel that land use should be. And this is more broad-based: residential, commercial, industrial. As with the last process, it goes in front of the planning board through a public hearing, and staff makes its recommendations and we get their input. It also goes in front of another lay board, the Planning Commission in downtown Tampa at the county center, who represents all jurisdictions in Hillsborough County. And they formulate a recommendation to the city through another public hearing. And then ultimately it comes in front of the city commission for their action. It's a rather lengthy process and a rather complex process. It has many stages. In particular, we notify all the residents within 250 feet so they can be involved with that process and show up to those public hearings and contact staff. Also, we advertise it in local papers so the public is aware that this action is taking place. Being an elaborate process, it can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to go through that. And that is the first step that we go through, bringing that property into and consistent with our comprehensive plan.
And so the comprehensive plan is something that's designed with input from citizens, from planning staff, ultimately goes through the same process with the planning board and the commission, and again, just evaluation all the way around to determine what the building patterns will be like for our community. Is that a fair summation?
Exactly. It's a rather lengthy document. It's on both the Planning Commission and the City Plant City's website. And again, it's basically the blueprint of how the community wants to grow. The current title is the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan because the planning horizon is 2040. And as I mentioned, it covers such topics as land use and housing, public utilities, schools, and all those are the things that the community has let us know and also the commission know how they want to see their future. There are many themes that run through the comprehensive plan. They want to offer local jobs. They want to have an employment base, be sure that they don't become a bedroom community for Lakeland and Tampa. And one thing we've done in our comprehensive plan is we've programmed a lot of opportunities for employment centers in Plant City and to offer those options for the city so they can build those deep multi-generational roots in the community. And when we have property come in through a voluntary annexation, we have to determine what is the best use for that property to meet that overall vision.
So it's not a kind of a haphazard growth pattern. We recognize growth is coming and we're being deliberate, intentional to make sure that it's sustainable and responsible.
Exactly. I mean, there's many things that feed into that, and obviously a lot of it has to do with the actual financing and the budgetary process of the city. And we don't want to create a lot of urban sprawl that the city struggles to serve. We want that to be compact. We like it to be mixed use so people can work, play, and enjoy their lifestyle in one location without long trips. And all those items have been thought out well in the comprehensive plan for Plant City, creating that vision. And the community was extremely involved with that process. And through a lot of public outreach, we update that plan every 5 to 7 years. We're beginning that process now with some early projections that we're taking it out to a new planning horizon to 2045. And at the appropriate time, we'll be coming back out to the city and validating what their vision is today versus what it was 5 to 7 years ago.
And so even after the land use change happens, it's still not finished. We still have more process to go through before somebody can actually build on that particular site, including things like making sure that level of service on the roads and schools are in place, those types of things. Is that correct?
Right. You're basically only a third of the way through the process, so it is a complex and lengthy process. And I think that's good because there are some critical decisions that need to be made. The next major step in the process is rezoning the property. Now, where land use is the broad brush use of what it is, residential, commercial, industrial, the zoning actually gets more down to the nitty-gritty of how that property will be built. You know, how big the buildings will be allowed on it, how many homes will be allowed on that, what are the setbacks from other buildings and other facilities that will be required. In some cases in form-based code, what the buildings will look like, what uses will be allowed, and how will they mix. So the zoning is another process that goes through. Again, it's handled more in this case, it's handled more by the Planning and Zoning Division because it's an implementation process, where the land use process was handled more by the Planning Commission, which is, again, more long-range planning. So when they go through that rezoning process, they have all the city departments weigh in, public utilities, city engineer, police and fire, and they recommend a zoning that they feel is appropriate to the city commission through a public hearing process that allows people to participate.
Yeah. So the point that I want to make sure that we're communicating to everybody, and I think hopefully we've got it across here, is that it's a very long process with multiple points along the way for people to have input.
Yes, and that even the rezoning process is not the end of that process. For example, if someone was coming in and wanted to develop their property with, say, a new neighborhood, we have other processes that again have opportunities for public participation, particularly when we call platting the land, or actually subdividing that property down to individual lots for homes. And we really get involved with the engineering at that point, how the roads are going to look, how they're going to be laid out, how the homes are going to interact with each other, where they're going to gain access from adjacent roadways. And again, that goes through a public hearing process and ultimately comes in front of the City Commission and gives the opportunity for individual, whether they're an unincorporated county or Plant City, to again to have comment on that process.
And also, is it at that stage where other agencies, such as environmental agencies, might opine on the circumstances as well?
Yes, there are several points where we garner input from agencies outside the Planning Commission and City Plant City. We get the Southwest Florida Water Management involved in many cases, the Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, because we want to be sure we protect our environmental amenities. We also coordinate closely with unincorporated Hillsborough County. Obviously, it's a transition of that property from the unincorporated county to the city, but we have a good working relationship with them and coordinate those activities. There are other groups that we get involved with, and we seek all their input.
Great. Mark, I really appreciate you being with me today. It's a lot of work that you all do, and I really appreciate your expertise and your long-standing service to Hillsborough County and Plant City. And we've got an excellent staff at the City of Plant City. I can tell you, when something comes before us at the Commission, I have great confidence in the work that you all do. And when I make my decisions, citizen input, the expertise of staff, the opinions of the planning board all weigh very heavily on my decision. And so that this process is very extensive for a reason, because we want to be sure that we're doing it in a way that's going to serve our community well. So,
well, it has been a great honor to be here, and I feel very fortunate to be able to serve Plant City. I've been with the Planning Commission for 30 years, and I moved to Plant City in 1997. And I approached my executive director at the time and asked him if I could serve my city. And he was very kind in allowing me to become the liaison to Plant City. And I've relished in that role since 2002, and I hope that will continue through the rest of my career.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for spending some time with us today. I know this video was a little longer than usual, but as you can see, the whole process around our planning is very complicated for a purpose. We want to make sure that as we're growing in Plant City, that we're doing it responsibly, that's going to be sustainable for decades to come. And again, I really appreciate all of our city staff, those that serve on our Planning Commission and Planning Board, the advisory boards to our group, and all the citizen support and input. So there are plenty of opportunities for you to engage in this process, and we'll make sure that we try to keep you posted on those public hearings and that you'll have an opportunity to be involved in it. Thank you and have a great day.